Cool, we'll start now, Robbie.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Apologies for the slightly late start. We're just having some technical issues with getting it started. Just wanted to welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar as an introduction to the SAMplicity 365 service and the technology that sort of backends it. My name is Robbie Richmond. I'm the Managing Director of EasySAM, and I'm joined by Phil Hames, who's a Director at the Business Software Centre. TBSC have developed the technology that we base our SAMplicity 365 service on. So I'll go through a few slides just briefly by way of introduction, and then pass over to Phil, who can take us through a demonstration of the technology. We will have question and answers. We'll take questions and answers. Please use the chat box, which is hopefully on the side of the screen on the Teams event. Rather than sort of going through questions during the presentation, we'll set aside some time at the end to address any questions, and obviously we will share at the end of the webinar. We'll share any questions and answers that were provided as well with everybody who attended, so that you've got something to kind of reference back to. So yeah, please use the chat box, and we'll make sure that all questions are addressed towards the end of the presentation. So I just wanted to go through really briefly. I know you're probably mainly here to see the technology, but just a little bit about EasySAM. We're a dedicated software asset management consultancy company. We have a number of different service offerings, whether it be a really simple baseline audit, license compliance review. We have a full managed service called SAMplicity, SAMplicity 365, which covers Microsoft 365 as a component of that. We offer SAM tool implementation support. So for organizations that already have a SAM tool, if they need some assistance getting it up and working and getting some value for potentially a large amount of investment that you've already made, we can help with that. And if you haven't got a tool in place and you're looking for some assistance selecting a tool that's going to work really well in your environment, then again, that's something we can help with. And then finally, we offer best practice SAM training, whether it be ITIL aligned or ISO 19770 aligned, and there's optional certification on that, which I think is a kind of a powerful thing to have on our CVs, knowing that the training that we've done and the qualifications that we've got are aligned with sort of publicly recognized, industry recognized standards. In terms of getting control of your software estate and your software usage, there's a couple of really obvious kind of areas that customers benefit from, whether that be a reduction in software costs. We know that optimizing software, research done by industry bodies like Gartner, could show a very, very clear a link between managing your software and reducing those costs, reducing the likelihood of getting audited and being better prepared when you do get audited. We know that there's a likely outcome of all of these kind of economic slowdown is going to be that software vendors are going to enforce their audit rights more regularly. We saw that previously with previous issues with the economy, and we fully expect that to be the case here. Having better intelligence for all of your IT projects, thanks to having a better understanding of your hardware and software, just makes it easier whether you're looking at standardization or an upgrade or a migration. You want to move from on-prem into the cloud, etc. All of those things are going to be a lot easier if you have better intelligence of your environment. And then finally, productivity, standardization, having well-defined and tested policies and processes around the acquisition, deployment, support, and decommissioning of software in your environment. All of those things are going to enhance the productivity, reduce the amount of technical issues, etc. that you've got. The product that we're talking about today, SAMplicity 365, is obviously very much focused in the SaaS space, and we know from some research that was done by the guys at the Business Software Centre that a lot of organisations who are using SaaS are not tracking what is being used and what their spend is. They're not keeping an accurate eye on that. 75% of SaaS using businesses are not doing that. Those who are using SaaS are frustrated at low levels of automation and how difficult it is to optimize those environments. They also recognize that trying to track SaaS usage is very complex and very immature. Really, it's obviously a fairly new technology, but we see organizations really struggle to manage usage when it comes to SaaS-based applications. It's the perception is it's easier to manage stuff that's on-prem because you can put an agent out there, it'll report back on what's installed, where it is, and how it's used. A lot more difficult to do that in a SaaS environment. And what's interesting is this is against a background of SaaS growing very, very rapidly. IDC are estimating an annual growth rate of about 18% per year. So it's one of the fastest growing areas. I think probably is the fastest growing area of IT spend. And particularly when we look over the last little couple of months where we've had the challenges that relate to the global pandemic, usage of applications, people working from home, etc., all of which SaaS makes fairly easy. I suspect that actually that 18% figure, certainly for 2020, will be considerably higher. Specifically, if we look at one of the most commonly used SaaS environments, Microsoft 365, we can see very clearly that this is an environment that needs to be managed better than it is. There's a link to the source for these statistics that I've shared on the screen is at the bottom of the screen there, but some research that was done in April this year shows that 44% of Microsoft Office 365 licenses are underutilized or oversized. So we're spending more on that than we need to, considerably more. 38% of E5 licenses could be downgraded to E1. Considerable cost saving, very obvious cost saving there. And Office 365 costs could be reduced further by 14% by identifying and decommissioning inactive licenses. So these kind of numbers are just for one product, just for one platform, Microsoft 365. It just shows the scale and the sort of difficulty that people have in managing and in optimizing those environments. And the good thing is we have a solution. We have a service which is a combination of some technology and some intelligence that we sort of wrap around that, which can help to make this process really a lot simpler. And with that in mind, I will bring in my co-host Phil Hames from TBSC, who will run through the SAMplicity 365 powered by Smarter 365, which is the TBSC product, in a bit more detail. Phil, if you want to share your screen, and we'll take it forward from there.
Right, thanks very much, Robbie. I'm just going to share my screen, and I will click on a few slides. So I've just got a couple of slides here to show a little bit about us as a company. Coincidentally, we're based in Basingstoke, same as EasySAM. We have been working around software usage and SaaS usage for many years, and we really look with this particular technology to optimize the usage of Microsoft 365. As I mentioned, we're based in Basingstoke, but we also have an office in California in the States. We've always really had this idea of pay for the software you use and make sure you're using the software you're paying for. We are government G-Cloud approved. We're also a Microsoft ISV partner, and we've been through the Microsoft processes for security validations and the configuration of our product, which is all run on Azure. So customers, we have had a variety of customers, and we've worked in many segments: public sector, financial, pharmaceuticals, medical, and across the UK and Europe, even in Japan as well. So Smarter 365, the objective is really to optimize the usage of Microsoft 365. There's two elements to this. One is to make sure you're not wasting any subscriptions. So if you've got unused subscriptions, then you're able to recycle those subscriptions or cancel them if they're not going to be used. And the other is to look at your usage and the behavior of your users and make sure that you are able to support your users in getting the best out of those products and those subscriptions. One of the things that's really important at the moment is particularly Microsoft Teams management, and I saw figures that were released last month by Microsoft to show that between March and April, the usage of Teams went up by 75%. I think the highest recorded usage was 200 million users in one day. So the growth has been quite incredible, but still it's estimated that only 30% are active users for all of the people who've got subscriptions. So our technology is available for all of the licensing models, including the CSP and the other licensing models like enterprise agreements. A key thing is always looking at how you can automate the unused subscriptions in terms of recycling them or identifying how you can help people who are not using them. We aim to maximize the return on investment by ensuring that you get the maximum usage. And of course, as I mentioned, it's got Microsoft ISV approval. So just how it works, we have a direct link into the Microsoft 365 tenancy. We draw data into our Azure data warehouse, and it is then displayed in a white label dashboard. So you've got the analysis of particular usage and trends. There's also some billing integration facilities and some automated intelligence for channel partners who are able to, in effect, help with the automation of some of the processes. We are adding in other SaaS products, and we've got connections into about 40 other SaaS technologies. So I'm just going to come out of these slides, and I will then show you a demonstration of the product. So you should see coming up on your dashboard, on the screen of the dashboard, and this is a view of the overall dashboard. We've got here some demonstration data, so you will see that all of the user details are being anonymized, but we've got in total a 57% usage in this organization. It's on a CSP, so a monthly payment schedule, and it's estimated there's over £5,000 per month in terms of potential optimization benefits. 3,500 comes from what we call reharvesting or recycling, and optimization of usage is nearly £2,000, and there's nothing in surplus. Surplus are really the subscriptions that have not been provisioned for users. Often we find in things like enterprise agreements there is a surplus. However, within the CSP subscriptions, there's more flexibility to be able to just allocate as and when you need them and provision them as you need them. But this particular organization has got into a little bit of a situation with their reharvesting or their recycling. So if I click on this, we'll be able to see some details of where this has come from. So we can see here the particular subscriptions. There's 92 user subscriptions here. You can see that I've anonymized all of the data. We can see the cost of the subscriptions, and we can also see here where people are inactive on particular apps. So we know these people have not been really using their key apps, and we can start a process to automate the recycling. So the first thing we would do really is to email all of those users. So we can set up a template email to all of them, and then we can gather emails back from them if there's a reason for them to continue. But if they've left the organization, then of course you would want to recycle those subscriptions or cancel them. We did see some research that that 80% of people who leave an organization still have access to SaaS applications for a period of time when they've actually left the organization. And we feel that that's not just a waste of money, but it's also a security risk as well, to have people leaving and potentially going to competitors, but still having access to information from SaaS applications. So it's wise to have a process that leads towards the recycling of those subscriptions. And we can do that by deleting them, or recycling by attaching a script which can automatically be run once the administrator has authorized it. So if I just go back to the dashboard, I can tell you a little bit more about optimization. So optimization is a little bit of a two-edged sword in that there are two things that you may want to do. One is a simple thing that you may say, well, this particular user with these email addresses, they are assigned a certain product and we could downgrade them and we could make a cost saving. However, often you've allocated the correct subscription and what you're actually seeing is that they're inactive on certain components. And what you're wanting to do is help those people to become active users and make full usage of those particular capabilities. So in this case, we would want to do a little bit more investigation and get them using those full facilities. So it needs a little bit of delving into, and I can use Teams as an example of how we can do this. We do have an overview of usage levels of key apps in the dashboard, but if I click on Teams, then we can start to see some of the user behaviors that are very interesting for us. So here we're seeing that it's actually 22% of the users that are active. We can see the number of meeting counts. We can see in the last month it was 22%. And I can just go down here, but we see that even with people who are using it, they're mainly using it for private chat. And there's not so much use of meetings and calls and team chats. So this would suggest that there's probably opportunities to get more benefits for even the people who are being active. So there's some ways that we can do this. Here we've got details of all of our users. We've just got a few displayed. We can see their names and email address. I'm just going to pull this out as a table and I'll show you some of the things we can do to help and optimize the usage. So here we've got two displays. We've got the people who shown here with their last activity date, and I can also show a color coding on their usage levels. So people with high usage are in green. If they're not using it, are in the bright red. We've also got a little bit more information here. So I can also see the users and how many times they've used it, the last time they've used it, or if they're not using it at all. So let's just have a look and say, for instance, we wanted to look for the power users of meetings. We may want to start looking at how we help them with audio visual equipment to help them to get more out of their meetings, or maybe some additional facilities. So if I click on that, then I can immediately see here the heavy users of meetings. If I was to probably go to last activity date and click there, then I can see here the people who have never used it, and they're 0 and everything. And I can also go down here and I can start to scroll up, and as I go up, I'm starting to see people who have got sporadic usage and the people who probably need retraining. So I get into the people who've got some usage, but overall what we're doing is identifying all of those people who are not getting anything out of Teams. Then we may run some online training, and again we can see a lot of the information there. So if I then just go back to the Teams report, I've got the overview again. You can see how easy it is to start taking this data out, and you can automate things again, like I showed you with the recycling of subscriptions, to automate emails to go out to these users, asking them why they're not using it, if they need training, and you can automate the provision of online training for them. One of the things that often has been asked to us is compliance. So it's something that's overlooked with SaaS because it's taken for granted that compliance has been a given with SaaS. But really, you should also keep an eye on how many times you're installing your Microsoft 365. And we've just done a very simple compliance check here. So what we're able to do here is seal all of our subscribers. Now, in this case, they've only got one subscriber who's actually gone over and installed it 11 times. We have had cases of 10, even 15% of users where they've installed it more than 5 times. Anybody who's on 5 is highlighted in orange, but the vast majority in this organization, they're all at the green level, which is up to and including 4 installations. And we can see the type of device where they've installed it, whether it be Windows or mobile devices. So I've given you a general overview of some of the facilities, and there's quite a lot of other things that we can do on analysis, but you can see that there's the power to gather data, analyze it, and then automate some of the actions out of the product in terms of sending emails, gathering responses, and also running scripts that do a lot of the work of the deprovisioning or the changing of things for the users. So I'm going to just stop sharing my screen, and oh, there's one thing. Sometimes we're asked about EA or CSP, which is the best type of subscription for a particular organization. So I just set up an example here of some data that we had of a particular EA, so it's all anonymized, but basically we can see here the breakdown of an EA for a particular organization and how it's split in terms of the subscriptions, and that's currently the split by the subscription profile. But if I remodel that, I can put in the customized pricing for a CSP and match it with what's actually being used and saying, well, on an EA, there was a number of inactive accounts or subscriptions. And if it had been managed on a flexible basis, like on an CSP subscription, there would have been an annual saving of nearly £50,000. And we can see the SKUs where those savings come from. And we can also see where the EA was better value. If we wanted to continue on an EA and have a revised flexibility, then it could deliver a saving. So we're able to do some remodeling and what ifs by just basically taking the data and doing different types of licensing to optimize the pricing. So you can see the benefits of the flexibility, but also you can see where the benefits of an EA will come from. So I think that covers the major points that I've got to show you, and I'll just stop sharing and hand back to Robbie.
Okay, let me just go back to our slideshow. Thanks, Phil. That was very useful, very informative, and I think the potential for optimization, as was showed by both your presentation and demo, Phil, and some of the stats we proved earlier on, I think just really highlight that this is a significant area for organizations to be able to optimize and potentially to save some money. In terms of question and answers, I've had a few in. If people want to put any questions or anything they want to address, please use the chat box, the meeting chat, and we'll make sure that those get covered. So there's a couple here which probably I can answer, and a couple that Phil can probably best resolve. So first question in is SAMplicity 365 or Smarter 365 something that a person can manage themselves? Absolutely is the answer. We can provide some services around it, maybe as either in isolation or as part of a managed service, a larger scale managed service. So maybe not just looking at your SaaS environment, but looking at your on-prem, your own Azure cloud, that kind of thing. But certainly, if you wanted to just have access to this data and these sort of usage figures, etc., that's something that we can help with. So absolutely is the answer. If you've got some SAM capability and some skills, some licensing knowledge, then for sure you could look at managing and using this data yourself. Second question, this I'll ask to Phil. How does Smarter 365 pull data from Microsoft 365?
Yeah, so essentially we've got a link that goes into the Microsoft 365 tenancy. It can be set up really within 5 minutes. It's a simple task of registering with us, and then we have a few links just to add into your 365 tenancy, and then about an hour and a half later, the data is all populated into the dashboard, and it's pulling information directly from the 365 API. So it's quite a complicated thing to create if you were to try and do it through spreadsheets and things like that. But by working with Microsoft over the period of about 12 months, we were able to automate all the process of grabbing the data and updating it on a regular basis. So as you go through the various months, it will also record your trends, because then you can start to see your cost savings and optimization benefits coming up on the dashboard. And it will also show you how your usage levels have increased over the months. So it's a bit of a continuous process and helps you to show how your return on investment is improving.
That's great. Thanks, Phil. The next question I'll respond to: is there a locally installed agent, or is it just cloud-based? So Phil's already kind of indicated that it's a cloud-based system, so it accesses the Microsoft 365 tenant and pulls the data that it needs from there. Now, there might well be a requirement for your organization to have data coming in from other sources for your software asset management actions, and probably that will involve some sort of an agent. But in terms of the specific product that we're looking at today and optimizing Microsoft 365, we can do that without an agent, so we can certainly cover that off. Phil, question for you. I think you've probably partly answered this already. Is the reporting and output from Sparta 365 recognized or validated by Microsoft?
Yeah, so we have an approval on the Microsoft Cosell program. We went through a fairly lengthy process over a period of months of engaging with the Microsoft ISV team, and they check three aspects really. One is the security, how we've done the security within Azure. The second is the configuration and how we've set things up to make sure we're doing it in the most efficient manner. And the third is the capability of the product for delivering a benefit for users. Microsoft are very keen for 365 subscribers to optimize their usage. Obviously, for Microsoft, there's a benefit if people are using all of the facilities, because they want people to continue with their subscriptions. So they were very keen to ensure that we were including information that would help people to optimize their usage. So it has gone through those fairly rigorous checks on the ISV program, and is now part of the approved Cosell program with Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also the point, Phil, that all that you're doing is basically feeding into the back-end data, or pulling from the back-end data that the Office 365 tenant provides. You know, it obviously makes that a lot simpler to, you know, effectively you're just taking a view on the data that's already there. So, and then last question I've got, if anybody does have any other questions, please pop it in the chat. The last question: what kind of actions can be automated or scripted?
Yeah, so the things that you can do to script are things, for instance, such as taking a subscription, running a script, and it will then delete from the tenancy a particular user, and you can do many of them. So let's say, for instance, you've had 250 people left. You can automate that, and the task is done within a couple of minutes. If you've got something like an enterprise agreement, you would put all of those subscriptions back into your surplus, so they could be recycled into other users. If you were on a flexible contract like a CSP, then you'd be able to delete those out of your subscriptions, and the next month you would be saving money. The other things that you can automate are process tasks. So these are things like sending out the email to particular users, because you don't want to go into any changes without validating it with the users. So you can send out the email, you can ask for a response, and there are certain techniques that we can provide which will take a process, and once we get an answer to something, then it'll lead on to the next stage of the process. So you can string these processes together, and by combining processes and scripts for actions, you can automate a lot of your work. Nobody wants to sit there doing manual tasks all of the time. If you can automate it, you may as well use that automated intelligence to run the monotonous tasks for you.
That's perfect. Thanks. Thanks, Phil. That's it in terms of questions. Hopefully, guys, you found the information that was provided and the demo, brief demo of the product useful. We'd love to give people access to this on a sort of proof of concept basis, so you can see what it looks like with some of your own data in it. Please feel free to either contact myself or Luke, who I think sent out the invites to today's webinar. So if you do want to see a bit more information, or maybe have a look at how it might work in your environment, or even more broadly, if you're having any issues around implementing or improving your software asset management processes and sort of the services that you have internally, please feel free to reach out to myself or Luke. And I want to thank Phil for his time today. I appreciate you putting that together, Phil. I think that was really useful. We'll send copies of the presentation out to everyone as well who attended, so they've got something to refer back to. So that's it. In the absence of any more questions, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and hopefully you found it useful, and we will be in touch shortly. Thank you.